Welcome to Divine Reveal. What if I told you that the whisper you're ignoring right now will become the scream that haunts your deathbed? What if that gentle nudge you keep pushing away is God's final attempt to save you from a life of what if? What if your silence in this moment could cost you the next 10 years of your life? God's chosen one, STOP, pretending you don't hear him. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That voice that comes at 3 a.m. when the world goes quiet. That pull in your chest when you're scrolling through distractions. That knowing that burns in your spirit when you're sitting in another meaningless conversation, another dead-end job, another toxic relationship that's slowly killing your soul. You know, but you keep pretending you don't. That pretending, that delay, that hesitation, it's not harmless, it's poison. Regret will stalk you like a shadow if you keep ignoring his voice. It'll follow you to your grave, whispering, "You knew, you always knew." But you chose silence over surrender. Listen to me carefully. There are people watching this right now who are one decision away from breakthrough and one delay away from another decade of spiritual starvation. The enemy doesn't need to destroy you. He just needs to keep you busy enough to miss God's frequency. You think you have time? You think tomorrow will be easier? Tomorrow is not promised, and God's patience is not infinite. Before we go deeper, I want to thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just giving. You're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your support, your time, your attention. It all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead. Now, type Amen if you know God has been whispering but you've been delaying. Let me see who's ready to stop playing games with the Almighty. Don't click away. If you walk out now, you'll miss the very word that could save you from another wasted decade. This isn't just another message, this is your intervention. The next 60 minutes will either expose the lie you've been living or become the moment everything changed. Stay with me. Your future self is begging you to listen. Why do we lie to ourselves about the voice of the Almighty? Why do we pretend that the Creator of the universe is somehow unclear in his communication? Why do we convince ourselves that the God who spoke galaxies into existence suddenly becomes mute when it comes to their destiny? Dear one, let me tell you what's really happening in that beautiful wounded heart of yours. You've been hurt, dismissed. Maybe a pastor told you that you weren't spiritual enough. Maybe family said your dreams were foolish. Maybe the world convinced you that at your age, God's done speaking to you. So now, when his voice whispers in the morning quiet, you tell yourself, it's not really God. Maybe it's just my thoughts. When that burning in your chest won't let you sleep, you rationalize, maybe I'm too old for this. Maybe it's too late. When every fiber of your being screams that you're meant for something greater, you silence it with, who am I to think God would use someone like me? This is the psychology of pretending, and it's killing your soul inch by inch. You've been gaslit by a world that profits from your silence. They told you that God only speaks to the young, the educated, the perfect. They lied. Moses was 80 when God called him to lead Israel out of Egypt. Abraham was 75 when God promised him nations. Anna was 84 when she prophesied over baby Jesus in the temple. Your age isn't disqualification, it's preparation. Your scars aren't shame, they're credentials. Your delays aren't proof of God's silence, they're evidence of his perfect timing. But here's what breaks my heart. While you're busy convincing yourself it's not God's voice, that divine phone keeps ringing. Every day, every night. Ring, ring, ring. And you keep hitting decline because you've been programmed to believe you're not worthy to answer. Listen to me carefully. If you never pick up that phone, you will miss the most important call of your life. The call that changes everything. The call that heals your marriage, restores your finances, rebuilds your health, reunites your family. The call that makes every betrayal, every disappointment, every sleepless night worth it. But the enemy doesn't need to destroy the phone. He just needs to convince you it's not ringing. He doesn't need to silence God's voice. He just needs you to pretend you don't hear it. Scripture says in 1 Kings 19:12 that God's voice came as a gentle whisper. Not thunder, not earthquakes, a whisper. And whispers require us to get quiet, get close, get still. But this noisy world has trained you to run from stillness, because that's where God's voice becomes undeniable. You know that burning in your chest when you read certain scriptures. That's not indigestion, that's revelation trying to break through. You know that restlessness that won't let you settle for mediocrity. That's not discontent, that's divine dissatisfaction with your current altitude. The question that will haunt us in the next section is this: what happens to a soul that keeps ignoring God? Does he eventually stop calling, or does regret become the echo of his silenced voice, following you to your grave, whispering what could have been? The answer will either set you free or terrify you into action. Let me tell you something that might shatter everything you thought you knew about God's silence. You've been there, haven't you? Praying until your knees ache, crying until your throat burns raw, begging heaven for just one sign, one word, one whisper, and getting nothing but echoing emptiness. You thought God had abandoned you. You thought your prayers bounced off the ceiling like rejected calls. But what if I told you that God's silence isn't punishment, it's pregnancy? Listen closely. When young Samuel heard God's voice in the temple, he didn't recognize it at first. 3 times God called, and 3 times Samuel ran to Eli, confused, searching. The boy was hearing the voice of the Almighty, but his spirit wasn't trained to receive it. Sound familiar? How many times have you felt that stirring, that knowing, that pull in your chest, and dismissed it as your imagination? You're not crazy, you're chosen. And chosen ones don't get easy answers, they get sacred preparation. Think about Jonah. God gave him a clear directive: go to Nineveh. But Jonah ran. He bought a ticket in the opposite direction, thinking he could outrun the creator of the universe. 3 days in the belly of a whale, 3 days of divine silence before breakthrough came. That whale wasn't punishment, it was protection, it was preparation. It was God creating a womb of transformation in the depths of the sea. Your silence, your waiting, your seemingly unanswered prayers, they're not evidence of God's absence. They're proof of his precision. Here's what's really happening in that silence, dear one. God is growing something in you that's too sacred, too powerful, too holy to be exposed before its time. Like a baby in the womb, what he's developing inside your spirit needs the darkness, needs the quiet, needs the hidden place to form properly. You think about Peter, don't you? The night Jesus was arrested, Peter denied Christ 3 times. 3 times he chose silence when he should have spoken. 3 times he pretended not to know the very Son of God. That silence haunted him. That regret followed him like a bloodhound. But even Peter's failure became fertilizer for his future. His shame became the soil where his ministry would grow. How many of you right now are carrying the weight of your own 3 denials? The marriage you didn't fight for, the dream you abandoned, the calling you ignored, the loved one you never called back, the truth you never spoke, the hand you never extended. That regret sitting in your chest right now, it's not there to torment you, it's there to transform you. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think God's silence means God's absence. They mistake divine patience for divine indifference. They confuse sacred preparation with spiritual abandonment. The silence you're experiencing isn't empty space, it's sacred space. It's the pause between the lightning and the thunder. It's the deep breath before the birth. It's the hush before the breakthrough. God doesn't speak in emergencies. He speaks in intimacy. He doesn't shout over your chaos. He whispers in your stillness. And if you've been too busy, too distracted, too afraid to be still, you've been missing the very conversation that could change everything. Right now, as you're listening to these words, some of you are feeling that familiar stirring, that knowing, that pull. Don't you dare dismiss it again. Don't you dare call it coincidence. Don't you dare pretend you don't feel heaven leaning in. If you've ever felt God whisper at night when no one else was around, hit like right now so I know I'm talking to you. Because what I'm about to tell you next will either set you free from the prison of pretending or reveal why regret has become the most ruthless hunter of your soul. You want to know what regret really is? It's not just a feeling that comes and goes with your morning coffee. Regret is a spiritual stalker. It doesn't sleep, it doesn't age, it doesn't forget. And right now, it's hunting millions of God's chosen ones who keep hitting the snooze button on their divine calling. Listen to me carefully. A 65-year-old grandmother sitting in her empty house can feel the exact same soul-crushing sting as a 16-year-old who just missed their shot. Time doesn't heal, regret time feeds it. Every day you delay obedience to God, regret grows stronger, hungrier, more vicious. I've counseled dying men in hospital beds who whispered with their last breath, "Pastor, I heard God call me to ministry when I was 25. I'm 78 now. I wasted 53 years pretending I didn't hear him." The tears rolling down that man's face weren't from physical pain, they were from spiritual bankruptcy. Here's the truth that'll shake you to your core. Regret is not just memory, it's spiritual debt collecting interest. Every ignored whisper from God becomes compound interest on your soul. Every delayed yes becomes a lifetime of what if. You think you're protecting yourself by waiting. You think you're being wise by hesitating. You're feeding the beast that will eventually devour your peace. The Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes 3:1, "To everything there is a season." But what it doesn't say is that seasons have expiration dates. God's calling on your life has a window. Miss that window, and you don't just lose the opportunity, you gain a lifelong companion called regret. I knew a woman brilliant, gifted, anointed, who felt God calling her to start a ministry for abused women at 35. She was scared. "I'm not ready," she said. "Maybe next year." Next year became 5 years. 5 years became 15. At 50, she finally started. But by then, how many women had suffered without the help God intended her to provide at 35? She built something beautiful, yes, but she carried the weight of those lost years until the day she died. That's what delayed obedience costs, not just your breakthrough, but someone else's miracle. Right now, there's a calling burning in your chest, a business idea that could change your family's legacy, a ministry that could save marriages, a book that could heal generations, a move that could unlock everything. And what are you doing? You're calculating, you're procrastinating, you're waiting for the perfect moment. Perfect moment don't exist. Obedient moment do. King David wrote in Psalm 32:9, "Do not be like the horse or the mule, which have no understanding but must be controlled by bit and bridle. Stop being stubborn. Stop making God drag you kicking and screaming into your destiny." But here's where hope crashes into your despair like lightning splitting the darkness. What if I told you regret doesn't have to be your final story? What if God's voice still has a way of redeeming the years the locusts have eaten? What if the very thing that's been hunting you could become the fuel for your greatest comeback? The question is, will you keep running from your calling until regret corners you in a dead-end life? Or will you turn around right now and face the voice you've been avoiding? Because, chosen one, what I'm about to share next will either terrify you or liberate you forever. The war for your soul isn't happening on some distant battlefield. It's happening right here, right now, in the space between your ears. And you're losing. Every notification, every buzz, every ping is a bullet aimed at God's frequency. They know that if they can keep you distracted for just 1 more hour, 1 more day, 1 more year, you'll miss the very voice that could transform everything. You think it's innocent? You think scrolling for just 5 minutes is harmless? That's exactly what the enemy is counting on. While you're hypnotized by screens, God's whisper is being drowned in digital noise. Listen to me, chosen one. In 1 Kings 19, when Elijah was running for his life, broken and desperate, God didn't show up in the earthquake that shook the mountains. He didn't reveal himself in the fire that consumed everything in its path. He didn't speak through the wind that could move boulders. God came in a whisper, a still, small voice that required Elijah to be completely silent to hear. But here's what's destroying you. You've forgotten how to be silent. Your mind is like a radio stuck between stations, all static and interference. The signal is there, broadcasting 24/7, but you're tuned to the wrong frequency. When was the last time, and I mean the last time, you sat in complete silence for more than 60 seconds? When did you last turn off every device, shut every door, and listen for the voice that created the universe? You can't. Because you're addicted to the noise. You're terrified of the silence because that's where God speaks. And deep down, you know, He's going to ask you to change everything. The gossip that fills your ears? Static. The manipulation disguised as news? Static. The endless scroll of other people's highlight reels while your real life withers? Static, static, static. And while you're drowning in this manufactured chaos, God's voice gets quieter, not because He's walking away, but because He won't compete with the volume you've chosen over Him. Every day you delay, the frequency gets fainter. Every hour you choose distraction over devotion, His whisper becomes harder to distinguish from your own thoughts. You're not just missing messages, you're missing miracles. You're not just losing time, you're losing the very assignments that could save your marriage, heal your body, restore your finances, resurrect your dreams. The enemy doesn't need to destroy you. He just needs to keep you busy enough to miss God's frequency. Right now, tonight, shut down the noise. Even after you finish this video, turn off the electronics, light a candle. Sit with God. Don't miss the frequency He's pouring into you. Because tomorrow might be too late, and regret doesn't negotiate. But what happens when you finally tune in to the right station? What happens when God's whisper becomes louder than the world's scream? Stop. Just stop. Stop bargaining with God like He's some cosmic vending machine where you can deposit good intentions and get blessing on your timeline. Stop saying, tomorrow I'll obey, when tomorrow is not promised. Stop pretending you don't hear Him when His voice is burning through your chest right now. You want to know what's destroying your life? It's not the betrayal, it's not the sickness, it's not even the financial struggle. It's your selective hearing. You hear God when you need Him, but you go deaf when He needs you. You heard Him in the hospital room when the machines were beeping and death was knocking. You cried out then, didn't you? God, if you get me through this. But where were you when He whispered, leave that toxic job? Where were you when He said, stop enabling that grown child who's bleeding you dry? Where were you when He told you to forgive before the bitterness ate your soul alive? You heard Him in the betrayal when your own blood turned against you, when friends became enemies, when your heart shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. You begged Him then, why God, why me? But you went silent when He answered, because I'm preparing you for something they could never handle. Trust me. You heard Him in the silence after midnight when regret was choking you, when shame was suffocating your dreams, when loneliness felt like a death sentence. You whispered prayers then, desperate prayers, but you ignored him when he whispered back. Your pain has purpose. Your test is your testimony. Your breakdown is your breakthrough. You heard him, so stop pretending. Here's what's happening to you right now. Every time you delay obedience, you're not just postponing blessing, you're feeding the very demons that want to destroy you. The enemy doesn't need to attack what you protect in silence, but he can hijack what you keep ignoring. That business idea he gave you 3 years ago? While you've been praying about it, someone else launched it and made millions. That relationship he told you to end, while you've been working on it, it's been slowly poisoning your children's view of love. That forgiveness he's been pressing on your heart, while you've been holding grudges, bitterness has been eating you from the inside out like cancer. Listen to me carefully. God's voice doesn't get louder, your heart gets harder. Every time you hear him and choose delay, that spiritual muscle atrophies. Every time you rationalize away his leading, your discernment dies a little more. Every time you choose comfort over calling, you're building a wall between you and your destiny. But here's the promise that will shake your foundation. God specializes in last-minute miracles for first-time obedience. He can restore the years the locusts have eaten. He can turn your mess into your message, your pain into your platform, your breakdown into your breakthrough. The Israelites wandered 40 years for an 11-day journey because they heard God but chose fear over faith. Don't let your disobedience turn your breakthrough into a death sentence. The confrontation is now, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, now, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to break the cycle of spiritual procrastination that's been choking your destiny. But first, you need to decide. Are you ready to stop playing games with the God who holds your next breath in his hands? But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know, chosen one. Here's the truth that'll shatter every lie you've believed about your wasted years. Regret can be reversed. You heard me right. That crushing weight you carry, those decades you think you threw away, God's about to flip the script on your entire story. Joel 2:25 says it plain. I will restore to you the years that the locust hath eaten. Not some years, not most years. All the years the locust devoured while you were sleeping, while you were distracted, while you were pretending you couldn't hear his voice. Think about this. Time isn't a straight line for God, it's a river, and when you finally align with his frequency, he can reroute those currents. He can make that barren soil you've been standing on burst into harvest. He can turn your mess into your message, your pain into your platform, your breakdown into your breakthrough. I'm talking about supernatural restoration, not just getting back what you lost, getting back more than what you lost. With interest, with compound blessing, with divine multiplication. Right now, as I'm speaking these words, there's a 6-7-year-old woman watching this who's been mourning 20 years of a dead marriage. God's about to breathe life into love you thought was buried forever. There's a 5-year-old man who's been counting the cost of every financial mistake, every missed opportunity. The Lord is about to open doors that don't just restore your bank account, they restore your dignity. There's someone watching this whose body has been betraying them for years. Diabetes, high blood pressure, chronic pain that doctors can't explain. God's about to demonstrate that he's still in the healing business. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead is about to raise dead things in your body. You think it's too late? Abraham was 100 when Isaac was born. Moses was 80 when he led the Exodus. Caleb was 85 when he conquered his mountain. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification for a miracle. But here's the catch. This restoration doesn't happen while you're still pretending you don't hear him. It doesn't activate while you're still making excuses. It doesn't flow while you're still delaying obedience. The river changes course the moment you stop fighting the current. Your relationships, about to shift from toxic to transformational. Your health, about to move from decline to divine intervention. Your finances, about to go from barely surviving to abundantly thriving. Your purpose, about to explode from hidden to undeniable. But you've got to stop pretending you don't hear him calling your name. The question isn't whether God can restore your years. The question is, will you finally say yes before another year slips through your fingers like sand? Chosen one, if you've stayed with me through this entire message, you've already proven something powerful. You're not someone who gives up. You're not someone who settles for empty. You're someone who hungers for truth, even when it cuts deep. Remember this. Your delay is not your destiny. Your silence is not your sentence. And your past is not your prison. God's voice hasn't stopped calling because you've been slow to answer. His love hasn't diminished because your faith has faltered. You are not alone in this journey. Right now, there's a community of believers praying for breakthrough, praying for courage, praying for the very miracle you need. We see you, we believe for you, and we're standing with you in faith. But I need to ask you something that'll echo in your spirit long after this video ends. If not now, when? If God's voice is calling you today, right now, in this moment, what's your answer going to be? Let me pray over you before we close. Father God, I lift up every person who's heard this word today. Touch their hearts with your supernatural peace. Where there's been confusion, bring clarity. Where there's been fear, bring faith. Where there's been delay, bring divine urgency. Lord, open their spiritual ears to hear you clearly. Remove every obstacle the enemy has placed between them and their calling. Restore the years the locust has eaten. Heal what's been broken. Provide what's been lacking. And give them the courage to say yes to your voice today. In Jesus' mighty name. Amen. If this message stirred something in your spirit, don't keep it to yourself. Drop a comment below. Tell us what God spoke to you today. Ask for prayer. Share your breakthrough. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Share this video with someone who's been struggling to hear God's voice. Maybe it's a family member, a friend, a co-worker who's been walking through darkness. You could be the vessel God uses to reach them. And if this ministry has blessed you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We're building a community of believers who refuse to settle for ordinary when God has called us to extraordinary. Thank you for investing these precious minutes with us. Thank you for having the courage to listen when God whispered your name through this message. Your breakthrough is closer than you think. Your calling is clearer than you know. And your God is more faithful than you've ever imagined. Stay blessed. Stay listening. And remember, He's still speaking.